Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Cobbin, for those of you who don't know me, from the National Flood Forum, and I've been given the task of doing the final presentation. One thing that struck me about this guidance is that it does something quite unique, which is to bring together the technology with the people bit. What it actually does is make the link by providing some process between what technologies can do to actually solve technical problems and actually the people bit of how, whether you be a professional or part of the community or an individual who's at risk of flooding, and how you actually go about protecting yourself more than you might otherwise do. I've got all the post-its in front of me, which I will address as we go through in a minute, once I've extracted them from the front of my notes. Here we go. But I wanted to start off by saying we've come a long way. We've got, it's not that long ago before we didn't have any individual flood protection products apart from the bit of plywood in front of a door or whatever. It's actually it's a very new industry. It's also a situation where we've actually got rapidly changing weather patterns and rapidly changing development. So it's having to evolve to meet new situations. Surface water flooding is a relatively new phenomenon. Groundwater flooding, we've seen a lot of this last year. It's a relatively new phenomenon. And I'm sure what I see ourselves as being is in the middle of a process where the technology is improving, but the situation in which we're working within is changing rapidly too. There's a midpoint here, or an important milestone here, which was the pit review, the diagram on your left. And that's important because it set or captured some of the things that were changing already, but actually set us off in some new directions. And the first bit around that is about putting people at the centre of flood risk management policy. And that was a big change from just thinking about engineering as the tools and solutions. And alongside that, we've had a culture change, or we're in the middle of a culture change, whereby it's communities and individuals that are involved with flood risk management, not just organisations such as the Environment Agency and perhaps local authorities and central government and so on, who are, if you like, the patriarchal delivering solutions for people. So it's a different focus, and that means we've got to work in different ways. And again, that's where this guidance is really important, because it helps us to get to that point. So valuing and empowering communities is a core element, as was shown through Roger's presentation and Heather's presentation. I need to keep up. There's also been a whole set of initiatives, and I've only got a few of them here, but just to give you a flavour of what's been happening. As well as this guidance, we've had the DEFRA Environment and Environment Agency pilots, property level protection pilots, that have already been referred to. And they've been quite useful as a way of driving change, as a way of driving some of the processy stuff. For example, the Environment Agency's framework that's been produced on how to go about installing things and creating a template for people to be able to install flood risk protection equipment. We've also had the BSI kite marks has been referred to, the Flood and Water Management Act. The Environment Agency itself has reorganised itself in a completely different way to have that community focus as away from the technology focus. And we're just beginning to see the results of that emerge. So I think that's going to be quite exciting to see what impact that has over the next 18 months and 2 years in terms of not only engagement with communities, but actually engagement with the rest of the sector. We've got the new local flood risk management strategies that are just beginning to come off the shelf. And from the point of view of this launch, from the point of view of this guidance, they're a great opportunity for tying up different elements. Because for the first time, we're going to be beginning to see specific areas being identified as being at risk of surface water management, and the potential for the potential for developing projects and schemes to actually address that. We've also got the Flood Products Association, as I mentioned, and various other bits of guidance. And finally, the one I'd add to this is the Pathfinder, DEFRA Pathfinder project, which has just been launched and which we're heavily involved with, which provides us with a real opportunity to go and test some of these things out and to find out what works best in different situations, and to push this roadshow forward yet again. So why isn't property level flood resilience everywhere? Well, I did mention it was a new sector. And somebody's already raised issues about quality. The problem with a new sector is that everybody does it and everybody has a go, and sometimes it isn't wonderful. And there have been big issues about quality, and that's an element that we need to address through transparency. And that means about being absolutely honest about what works and what doesn't work, whether it be the product itself, the survey that goes beforehand, the way it's being used, whether the equipment's appropriate for the person, all the things that are highlighted in this guidance. So we need to be transparent, and if we are transparent, that will generate trust. And trust is needed on a number of fronts. People have mentioned it at different times today in terms of people who are having bits of kit installed to their house, perhaps local authorities who are involved in procurement exercises and also have a quality issue to deal with. The insurance industry, we talk glibly about the insurance industry as one unit, but it's not. It's made up of thousands of companies that are each having to act and make individual decisions on their own right, based on a contract that lasts for 1 year, given on a premium in excess. And the next year that contract will go with somebody else, or may well do. So there are whole issues around trust on that. And also around for people like DEFRA and government and statutory and regulators about what they can invest in policy terms. We've come a long way. We've now got this guidance. We've got the EA framework. We've got discussions that have gone on between government and various bits of industry. Somebody mentioned the issue about skills, and I think that's probably, for my book, that's certainly one of the big issues. How do we know that people are accredited and are able to? How do we guide people to somebody who can undertake the right surveys and so on? So that's a key element for me. But what we've effectively been putting in place is an operational framework to make this happen bit by bit. This isn't one solution, it provides the final answer, but it is about actually each one of these bits helping us towards that goal of making this stuff used on a regular basis as part of an overall approach to flood risk management, because you can be assured that putting bits of kit onto bits of property isn't the final solution. It's a solution as part of a wider approach that involves managing your flood risk within your community. And be that checking that the gullies are clear, making sure that new development is appropriate, checking for grill covers being covered, maintaining ditches or whatever it happens to be. Cost is a big issue. There's some University of Salford work which really questions just what people are able to pay and willing to pay. So it's another issue that needs to be addressed, because either we need to reduce the costs, we need to be able to get to a point where people understand that the costs that they're investing in are worth it. And that brings us back to a policy issue. Unless you've been flooded, why would you be in the slightest bit interested in it? And there's absolutely no reason why you should. And so there are very few, if any, there are very few levers or reasons why people should get interested in flood risk management of their property. So I think that is one of the big challenges for us ahead. Possibly the current discussions on the statement of principles and so on may help us towards that, but I think we also need to look elsewhere onto things like planning, building control, and some of the other things that have been mentioned today. So what are the benefits of the smartest guidance and how we might take some of that forward? I'm just going to refer back to your post-its at this point. They fall into three parts. The biggest part is we need to proactively issue this guidance and use it in lots of different ways. So the first one is actually issuing it to people who are at risk of flooding. Getting it well known within bodies such as Environment Agency and lead local flood authorities, and perhaps also resilience teams within local authorities as well, and housing teams. And that's pretty on that one. The second lot of things was around insurance. How do we link this stuff better into the insurance industry so that, firstly, the insurance industry feels comfortable about specifying this stuff as part of their overall risk assessment? That's the first thing. And secondly, that we use that process to send signals to people that actually this is good stuff. And maybe this guidance is part of the help that we need, that we can use along the way to make that happen. How can we actually, and I know this is a big ask because it picks up all sorts of confidentiality issues, but actually can we tie up some of the information that the insurance industry collects with some of the work that's going on with the development of surface water management strategies? Because if you could create it in a generic sense sufficiently, there would be a huge potential then to target groups with a particular risk and come up with solutions that are actually beneficial to everybody. There are huge confidentiality, commercial interest issues at stake there, but actually that is a prize worth going for, I think, if we're looking at to seriously manage risk in people's lives. And finally, we have a potted selection of things about government priority for flooding. Well, I happened to be in a meeting with Danny Alexander the other day on something completely different. And when I mentioned, and when I mentioned that I work for the National Flood Forum, he immediately came up with, yes, I understand, I know all about the National Flood Forum. I also know all about, and he was well engaged with the flooding issues and understood them. So I think people are alive to flooding, and certainly I get lots of correspondence. I know Mary used to get lots of correspondence with MPs. We see them all the time. So I think there is a door to be open there. There's an opportunity, but quite how we make the most of it, I think, is a real issue. How to apply for FDIGA grants through your lead local flood authority. For the common person in a flood group, that is a closed door at the moment. So that is something that we, I think, is a real opportunity. We're just in the process, I hope, of appointing somebody with that role. So if any of you want to pursue that further, then come and talk to me about that. Somebody also said about potted stories on the issues arising from real houses, because I think what Roger's presentation really demonstrated was actually it's about the particular. The particular is really important. And it's only when you go to the particular that a lot of these issues then arise, and how you can then reflect them in policy and in guidance and so on going forward. And the skills issue about quality and competence is going forward. Right. So the 6 steps, I think, can help us ensure that schemes are delivered properly, in combination with other things. It provides an operational framework. It addresses, the homeowners guidance addresses many of the issues that Roger raised this morning. So do go and look at your USB sticks, because I think it's worth a read. The process provides an evidence base for demonstrating a standardised approach and quality assurance, and it contributes to that really key issue of developing trust. It's not the only solution, but it's a major contributing factor. So what next? We need to promote and use this guidance wisely, broadly, and consistently. The point that Cobbin was making about the approach to flood products is well made about being at a solutions approach that is needed now. We've concentrated on products and how we fit them to buildings. Actually, what we want is something that's analogous to the alarm system that's fitted to your house. When you fill in your form, your tick box, when you apply for insurance, do you have an alarm fitted? Do you have a maintenance contract? Have you got flood protection fitted? Is it maintained? And is it maintained? Is it done to standard X? Actually, that's the position we should be in, not what bit of kit it is and was it, is it appropriate to this policy, property, whatever. That should be all buried and part of the system. So we also need to create the right policy environment where that can happen. And we've been moving towards that, but there's still a long way to go, both with DEFRA and Environment Agency on the one hand, but also the insurance industry, Flood Products Association, and how we shape that development and innovation for the future. And finally, and really importantly, we need to support communities to help them effectively manage their flood risk. Because at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. It's about people. It's actually about people saving them from the trauma of being flooded and helping them to recover from the process. So it doesn't matter how much we put into the effort of each of our different roles and each different parts of the sector. At the end of the day, it's about protecting people and helping them to live their lives effectively. Thank you very much.